Whether on the field, on the court, or on the balance beam, there's more to winning than the final score. Hi, I'm Patrick Manning of Black Desert Resort. We recognize the effort it takes to succeed. That's why we are proud to partner with the Utah Checkdown, the podcast that tells you the story before the game, then gives you a recap of what happened when it's all over. The grit, the glory, and the disappointments. Join us for stories of Utah's finest athletes and coaches. Thanks for listening.
You're listening to the Utah Checkdown podcast. And now your host, Josh Furlong.
Welcome back to another edition of the Utah Checkdown podcast. I am Josh Furlong. Happy to be back with you once again on this crazy week. It just doesn't end, right? After that BYU-Utah game, I just feel like it's been one thing after another. So sometimes you just need a deep breath. And that's how I feel this week. It's just been pretty chaotic. So we'll get into a lot of that. But first, let me tell you about our partners, Black Desert Resort. Black Desert Resort isn't just your home, it's an endless retreat where life is played your way. From intimate studios to spacious 4-bedroom suites, the raw beauty of southern Utah is your new backyard. Discover its championship golf course, exquisite dining, and world-class outdoor adventures, all yours to conquer. This is luxury your way. Learn more about owning a luxury residence at blackdesertresort.com. Come play, come stay. Alrighty then. Before we get started, I wanted to give an update. Maybe you've seen it on Twitter. I'm putting it out there that I'm also going to be doing Blue Sky as well. It's a new social media app that's been around, and Twitter's where I'm going to live still. I'm still going to post all of my stuff there. So if you do interact and follow me there, that's where I'm going to still do a majority of my stuff. However, I've noticed that there's been a large contingent of people, maybe not quite a ton yet, but a large contingent moving over to Blue Sky, and so I am also going to be on there. It'll probably be pretty similar stuff, just to kind of make it easy on myself. But if you do have a Blue Sky account and you want to follow me there and you don't want to follow on Twitter, my username is pretty easy. It's just going to be JFur, so JFUR. You can find it up that way, and I'll try to update as much as I can there as well as on Twitter, and try to give just people, new places to kind of get the content. This isn't a political thing. I know some people take this as me leaving Twitter because I hate Donald Trump or Elon Musk. That's none of this stuff. I'm not going to get into the politics stuff. I used to be a political writer for years, and honestly, I'm disenfranchised with politics in general. So I'm not making a political statement. It's more just I'm trying to give Utah fans who want a different place than Twitter another option where they can go. So if you are on Blue Sky, you can follow me there, and look forward to interacting with you there as well as on Twitter. That's just where I'm going to be. So with that, let's recap what's kind of happened since we last talked on Monday. And on Monday, obviously there was a lot of fallout from the BYU game and the holding penalty and Mark Harlan and what he said. But since then, there's been a lot more stuff with the team. So we're gonna kind of get into that because there has been quite a bit. And so we're no better place to start than with Brandon Rose. Obviously gets his first start last Saturday against BYU. Looks really good in that first half, right? I mean, I think they schemed to his skill set. They didn't try to get him to do too much. He didn't have to throw a ton. And when he did throw, they were good passes that, he was able to convert on. And all around, it was just a all around good show from him, and his ability to be able to do what he needed to do. Second half was another story. And for me, I said it in the last podcast, and I felt like Utah just changed. They became much more conservative. They weren't attacking it as well. You could see a noticeable difference with Brandon. He didn't seem as confident out there, and we have since learned why. So Brandon Rose in the game, was injured. There was a play, and I'm still trying to get the details of it, although I'll give you an update on that. But the details were that he was injured in the game and suffered a torn Liz Frank ligament. So this is in the ankle, essentially, and it's really painful. It's an injury that is not one that you can just easily play on. Apparently, this was done in the first half, and they ended up playing him in the second half, and that's why there was a difference. He is lost for the season. I can't remember if I just said that, but he is lost for the season. That's the third quarterback that Utah has lost this season, obviously with Cam Rising. Now you have Brandon Rose and Sam Heward. We didn't get to see Sam at all this year, but Utah is now into the depths of their quarterback room, and I'll chat about that in just a sec. But Brandon Rose's mom today on Twitter gave a little update, and I'll read it. It says, "Prayers for Brandon, please. Brandon will be having surgery today in Saturday night's game in the second quarter. Just before halftime, he tore his Liz Frank ligament. They gave him heavy pain meds and a still-plated insole so he could continue playing. The doctor couldn't believe he was really even able to walk. This is extremely painful, and your foot is totally unstable. Fortunately, with surgery, he will make a full recovery and come back stronger than ever." There's a lot in there, right? And I was told that it was more at the later part of the game. I guess, it was in the second quarter, which makes a lot of sense on why things look different, right? Like before, he looked pretty decisive on how he wanted to run. Yeah, he was composed in the pocket still, but he looked like he could run. He looked like he was good. He looked like a complete quarterback there in the system that Mike Bajakian had called. And then in the second half, it was like a shell of itself, right? There wasn't the same dynamic play calling as well as play. You didn't see them pushing the tempo a little bit. Maybe that makes sense a little bit why they decided not to go for it on fourth down and inside BYU's territory. But the reality is you have a guy that has suffered an extremely painful injury. And, I don't know that they knew to the full extent that it was this, right? They just knew that his ankle was messed up. And so it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback and say, oh, well, why did they play him in the second half? Usually you don't have a full understanding of what the injury is until later in the game or later after you've done x-rays or different things that way. And so by all accounts, there didn't seem to be anything where they knew this was the Liz Frank and they kept him playing. Now, if they did, that changes the tone of this. But that becomes a challenge. I don't know the conversations that they had with Brandon versus, the coaching staff, if they wanted him to play, if he wanted to play. Obviously, he wants to play because this is his opportunity. But I don't know that breakdown, right? I don't know that anybody will know that breakdown on whether he decided to play or whether it was the coaching staff that wanted him to. I would have to say it probably heavily leaned on what Brandon wanted to do, just simply because of pain tolerance and different things that way. If he wanted to play, the coaching staff isn't necessarily going to take him out. Now, with that said, if you do know that your quarterback is injured and it's pretty severe where he can't really walk much, and don't get me wrong, adrenaline is a crazy drug mixed with the other drugs that they take, probably Toradol. That's a common drug or pain medication that a lot of athletes take. NFL players take it all the time. So it's not like it's this crazy thing that people are taking to kind of skirt the rules, so to speak. But this is one of those things where adrenaline can kick in. You're ready to go, where you kind of play through some pain that you normally wouldn't be able to function with. But I would have to imagine that Brandon wanted to be out there, and the coaching staff is going to say, go as long as you can. But this begs the question, should they have switched out to Isaac Wilson? And in retrospect, it obviously looks like that should have been the case, right? It should have been the situation where he said, this is not an injury that he can play with. I don't want to say what's worse that can happen, but, it's tough to know, right? You've game planned the entire week and probably most of the bye week as well for Brandon Rose So to throw in another quarterback who hasn't really been a part of that game plan, at least to the extent of getting the starter minutes, that's tough, right? And you're expecting Isaac Wilson once again as a true freshman to come in and kind of save the show. So I understand the hesitancy to want to switch that up. I don't know if there were conversations that were had later that kind of will explain that on whether they wanted to decide that. Quite honestly, we didn't know this information to that level until, this morning on when it was. We knew that it was a Liz Frank. We knew that, he was out, all that kind of stuff. And I'd talked to people that had given me that information, but I did not know to the extent of this. And so it's tough, right? You've now lost your third quarterback. Once again, this is going to turn to the conversation about Utah's strength and conditioning staff. And, I feel like people just want to point a finger. They want answers for something when in reality, football is a dangerous sport, right? It's not something that you generally skate by without getting injuries. Whether, they're severe or minor, that's one thing. But there's going to be injuries. And what happened last year, according to Kyle Whittingham, is a lot of this was soft tissue injuries. So things like a pulled hamstring or different things that way where you can generally control that as a team, right? Like you can try to do things to limit the impact on certain muscles or how you're approaching things. And they retooled that this offseason. They really went into the offseason looking at, okay, what can we do to better help with those soft tissue injuries? These injuries aren't something you can prepare for, right? Like you can't prepare for Cam Rising getting thrown into a Gatorade cooler and injuring his hand, and then later injuring his leg. Like you just can't do that. This wasn't a hamstring injury. This wasn't something that was just, preventable. These are things that are really tough. Now with Brandon Rose, you've got a Liz Frank, injury. Like that timeline. My son goes to physical therapy, and he's a pitcher, and he's been going through some physical therapy. And I was talking to the therapist yesterday, and he said, this is generally an 8 to 12 month recovery time, and that varies, right? Like it's based on the individual and everything. But this is not a short term injury, right? Or at least the recovery isn't that way. So now you're looking at him potentially either into the season next year, or you're maybe back by the beginning of the new year, but it's not going to be an easy thing. And now what does Utah do, right? I think many believe that Isaac still has that shot, that opportunity to be that starting caliber quarterback, but now you're limiting yourself, right? You've got different quarterbacks that are out because of injury. You saw what that did to Cam Rising. You saw, his wasn't a Liz Frank, but you can see what injuries like that can do where you're not always 100%. This is going to be an offseason where I guarantee you Utah's going to look to the transfer portal. They're going to try to bring in a veteran guy, regardless of if both of these guys come back. You've got to be able to try to find somebody and get in there. At the very least, you're doing that to push your other quarterbacks. Not that, you don't have faith or trust in them that they can do it, but you've got to push them, and you've got to be able to try to get better. And that's, that's the nature of college football. That's the nature of the sport. You want to be able to make sure you're in a good spot, because you can't continue to have these situations where you're 3-4 deep on your quarterback and expect to compete. Utah was, 1 deep into its quarterback spot when Cam got hurt, and you're turning it all over to a true freshman. You can debate the merits of that, whether they should have done that, whether they should have given it to Rose to begin with and let Isaac redshirt and all that kind of stuff. There's no real benefit of that at this point. The reality is you have to manage this QB room properly, or you're going to find yourself continually in this spot. This is a team that, if they could have good quarterback play this year, or at least play in the sense where they have a better system than just putting all your eggs in the Cam Rising basket, this is a team that is in a completely different spot. The defense has done absolutely everything it needs to be able to win these games, and Utah, even with a moderate offense, is going to win a majority of these games. They're going to be close probably if you're not able to get a ton of points. But if Utah scores, on average 24 points a game, they're almost undefeated this whole season. And that's the crazy thing is, right? Like, so you're not even needing some, Heisman caliber type, Dylan Gabriel type quarterback or Cam Ward quarterback. It'd be nice to have that, but you don't need that with this team. You've got a defense that can do what it needs to, but you've got to be able to have consistent play. And all of this isn't fair to any of the quarterbacks, right? Isaac, as I've mentioned several times, he's a true freshman and got thrown into the mix. That's incredibly difficult for anybody to do that. Even Dylan Raiola, as I mentioned in a previous podcast, is struggling. Their team isn't doing what they need him to do. Even with Brandon Rose, you've never given him any reps. And the only true reps outside of that Houston game, I'm not even really going to count that, is you're throwing him into the mix of a heated rival, and you're doing that in a way where there's a ton of pressure on his shoulders. And for the most part, he lived up to it, right? But there's just not been a lot of experience. And so if you don't have that experience, you're left. You had Cam Rising, and then you had no experience left. You brought in Sam Heward, yes, but at the same time, he was a late arrival, and that really didn't help the room, at least in the sense of the offense that Andy Ludwig had, right? And so you're now for 2 straight years with mismanaged QB depth, and that's absolutely hurt this team. And so in this offseason, whatever comes of this, right? Like I know there's a lot of people talking about Kyle Whittingham being done and then turning over to Morgan Scalley. Whatever happens, there's still going to be a question about an offensive coordinator, right? Whoever is the head coach. But regardless of that, you've got to have an offensive coordinator that's going to help in the transfer portal era. You have to find a way to not be so conservative. You have to find a way to be able to make sure that you're set up for success because there's going to be injuries. There's going to be guys that no matter who your starter is, there's a high probability that guy is going to be injured. You might not, right? There's quarterbacks out there that play the entire year. Some are just built differently. Some have been able to protect themselves differently. Some just have dumb luck. Isaac Wilson, I would say, or Cam Rising has the dumb luck in the injury front, right? It just, no matter how many times he plays, he plays a physical style of ball, but at the same time, some of them have been really fluky. And that's just unfortunate luck. So you've got to go in, and out of anything that's going to happen this offseason is you have to get a right QB. And that's not to say that Brandon or Isaac can't be that guy, but you still have to get more. You're going to get Wyatt Becker in this upcoming class. But once again, inexperience, young kid. You're not going to turn the entire franchise over to, not franchise, school. This isn't professionals. You're not going to turn it over to a freshman quarterback again. So you've got to find a way to be able to get a veteran name in that room. And that's going to be tough, but you don't have, they can go to this and say, look, we're wide open. If you want to come in and compete, and Utah's never going to guarantee play. They're never going to say, if you come in, you're going to be our starter. But you can kind of hedge that a little bit by saying, here's the protection that we've had. If you come in, XYZ, you can come in and do this and kind of put 2 and 2 together, right? He still has to compete. He's still got to be able to be the guy. And you would hope that if you're bringing in a guy, that would be the case. But that's where they have to go this year. And so, in a year where you're likely going to see a ton of turnover in the transfer portal, I think this year more than probably most, just based on how things have gone, the number one priority outside of maintaining an offensive line, if Utah can maintain its offensive line and keep that intact and try to keep those guys intact, the next priority obviously has to be quarterback. And they have to go hard, right? A lot of your NIL dollars, although that's going to change a little bit with the settlement and paying players and all that, I'm curious to see how that wrinkle will all unfold. But whatever you can do to kind of get a competitive advantage, quarterback has to be it. And that's going to be it for a majority of programs throughout the country. So this isn't something that like, oh, Utah needs a quarterback, everybody, fall down and let them have it. This is going to be a very competitive environment, and Utah is going to have to be very nimble in how they approach this. But at the same time, you also have to maintain those relationships with the guys in the room, unless you completely don't trust them, right? Like if the coaching staff, whoever it is, doesn't believe in Brandon or Isaac or any of these other guys, then yeah, let them go, right? And that's the unfortunate part of sports. You build a relationship with them from seeing them on the field or you've watched them all this time. But at the same time, both the player and the program have to do what's best for themselves. And so you're going to have a lot of those conversations, right? You're going to have this, there's no guarantee that you're the starter, but, if you stay, this is a competition, all that kind of stuff. You still have to re-recruit your own roster, but it just depends on what they feel. And that you hope, if you do want them, that those players want the same. And it should be that way, right? Like if you're in a job and you don't feel wanted, why should you have to stay, right? You shouldn't have to feel stuck. And that's the same thing in college football. It's the same thing in the NFL. A lot of people will complain because players want to be traded. Why would you want to stay with a team that you don't feel loved or that you don't feel like you mesh very well? And so I know people get, all frustrated with the transfer portal, but the reality is this is great for both parties. It's chaotic and there needs to be things to kind of help it a little bit. But this is a great opportunity for players to be able to move. It's a great opportunity for coaches to be able to kind of fix their staffs. And so we'll see where this is at. Until we know if Kyle Whittingham's coming back or if Morgan Scalley's, taking over, that can leave a lot of change because you may have players that were there for Kyle Whittingham. I know there were players there for Andy Ludwig, and so that changes some dynamic as well. If Mike Bajakian stays on as an offensive coordinator, does that change? Or do you want to look for somebody else that fits, the skill sets of the players that you have? That there's going to be a lot of conversations about this football team in the offseason. So it'll start with quarterback. Like I said, it's now down to Isaac Wilson and Luke Batari. Isaac will be your starting quarterback again. They're gonna try to rely on him to be that starting quarterback for the last 3 games of the season. You have to go into this scheming towards his skill set, right? I've mentioned this many times. You can't expect Isaac to just suddenly change to be like what you want him to be. Now, there's some of that, right? Like players have to develop in a new system, but at the same time, you've got to be able to help him feel comfortable. We're going to leave it at that. I'm not going to get too in the weeds on this one. But outside of that, if Isaac is hurt or, maybe he just really isn't playing well, your only option is Luke Batari at this point. And we saw Luke Batari last year against Colorado. He got the win against Colorado. Granted, that was a very diluted, watered-down game. Both teams were kind of limping to the finish. Shadir Sanders didn't play. Travis Hunter did play, but it's different. So you've got 2 quarterbacks. I don't think Utah is in a position where they're worried about who QB6 is because at that point, just give it to Mekhi Bernard and let him run. It's getting to the point where there's so many people that have left that it's difficult. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully for your sanity as a Utah football fan, that they scheme well for Isaac Wilson, that he lives up for that moment in these last 3 weeks, maybe puts a better taste in your mouth if you've been off of the Isaac Wilson train. I know it's kind of a split divide with that, but regardless, you have to hope that he provides the spark to be able to be competitive. That doesn't mean that Utah's going to win any of these games or some of these games, but if you can see real progress and you can see this offense moving under Wilson, that's going to give you optimism. Now, outside of that, earlier this week, Micah Pittman, he left the team. He actually left the team before the BYU game, and I believe I mentioned that on the podcast last time. He went out and gave an update, and, he was injured, and he had some problems with taking Toradol where it actually messed him up a ton, and so he decided to walk away. There's other nuances to that, but at the end of the day, he walked away from the team. I'm not going to dwell on it. He's not on the team anymore, but you lose him. Also this week, you had Jalen Glover, running back at Utah. He says his intention is to enter the transfer portal on December 8th. So he's basically left the team, and he's going to await the transfer portal. So he's going to be the first of what likely will be an exodus at Utah. Exodus can be a good thing, and it can be a bad thing, right? This is an opportunity to really get guys that are committed to Utah. I'm not using this as an example as they weren't committed to Utah, but I'm just saying, in general, this is an opportunity for players that are really committed to Utah. They want to be a part of the system. And, hopefully between the coaching staff and the players, there's a good unity that goes well. Jalen Glover is trying to find his opportunity. Obviously, he wasn't getting a lot of play this year, unfortunately. He has done well, and you started seeing progress in the previous 2 years. But unfortunately, for him, it didn't work out. Whether that was Utah not putting him in the right position or him not really living up to what Utah wanted for him, kind of one and the same. I think they both were kind of just, it's better to split ways just because both parties weren't happy. So what that leaves is you obviously have Mekhi Bernard. See, now I switched it with Micah Pittman Mekhi Bernard. Obviously is your lead workhorse guy. He's been effective this year. He's been dominant. He's done a really good job and has really helped this offense go when they need something. But I've always, we've seen him injured a few times and taken out of the game. Looks like he's getting in concussion protocol and then comes back in. He continues to find a way to get on the field, but outside of that, you do have Mike Mitchell, you do have Dijon Stanley, but we really haven't seen either one of them in the last few weeks. And so it becomes a challenge as to what type of production you can get. I have to imagine there's, you've got to mix some of these guys in, but at the same time, I think Mekhi Bernard is still the guy that they're going to try to rely on. So you've got that. Like I said, it's going to be an interesting offseason. We're still a few weeks away from that, and we'll document all that stuff. But that's kind of the nature of this business. You're going to see guys come in. You're going to see guys leave. You just have to hope that Utah can build to the right way to be able to set themselves up for the 2025 season. So you got that. Kind of a little off side note on this. I want to kind of update you on some basketball stuff, and we'll transition to some basketball stuff as this football season wraps up here soon. But just as an update, men's basketball got a win over Queens on earlier in this week. They won 96-65. Gabe Madsen only had 4 points at halftime, really couldn't find his shot, but then exploded in the second half, finished with a 24-point game, 5 3-pointers, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. It's the third straight game, every game this season essentially, that he has led the team in scoring. Just really has found his rhythm. He's done a really good job of being able to help this offense go. But this is a team that has been really great at kind of moving the ball around, finding shots behind the arc. Mike Sharavjamps, Mongolian Mike is what he's called. He looked like he was going to lead the team in scoring, just had a great day all around. He had 19 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. I mean, he's the guy that, he's got those patented no-look passes. He can split defenders and then get to the rim. He's got tremendous length that he can be a great asset on the defensive side of the ball where, his wingspan is tough and then he can go up and get the blocks. This is a guy that is a phenomenal athlete, and I'm really excited to kind of see how he progresses. You have Ezra Asar, who has done really well on the post. He got a little bit of some butterfingers on, what was the game? Monday, Tuesday? I can't even remember at this point. It's been a long week. He had some butterfingers a little bit, couldn't kind of contain the ball and kind of had to re-dribble a ton. But he's going to be a force in the post, and I think his game will absolutely grow when Lawson Lovering comes back and the two of them can kind of tag team that. Jake Walleen really taking a step up this year. This is his sophomore year and coming in and really just kind of showcasing his talent. And it's only going to grow. He's still young in the system, and so it's going to be fun to kind of see his development. But this is a team that, they consider themselves positionless outside of their bigs, like a Lawson Lovering or a Zach Keller who has been injured. This is a team that can kind of play 1 through 5 for all of their guys, and that becomes a very beneficial thing for this team. They can all shoot, so you can get a lot of 3-point shooting. They move the ball a ton. It's a free-flowing offense. There's not a lot of straight sets like there was last year where they had to kind of manufacture some stuff. This is a team that has potential, but it's going to only get more challenging, right? And it's going to get more challenging starting next week, Sunday, when they play Mississippi State. This is a team that's, just outside the AP Top 25. They're receiving votes right now. Really solid team. This will be a good test for Utah. Utah has been playing a lot of these quad 4 games, and it's now time to kind of step that up, get that quad 1 opportunity, and see what they're made of. They're expected to get Lawson Lovering back. That's not a guarantee, but that's kind of it. Outside of that, you also have women's basketball. They play tonight. If you're listening to this on Thursday against Northwestern, that'll be another great test for them as well. They've had 2 games to start the season and then kind of took a really long extended break before they get this Northwestern game. But this is a team very similar. A lot of shooters, a lot of ball movement, great post play by Maya Torre. She's been fun to watch, and I'm really curious to see how she develops. But 2 basketball teams that are exciting to watch right now. And I think, as you're kind of frustrated with football season, maybe you can turn over to basketball. I know this is the time of the year where people are still focused on football, and you really don't pay attention until after the new year. But if this is something that you want to watch, get them well. The wins are probably more guaranteed because you're playing a little bit. You are playing lesser opponents in terms of what they're able to do. That Big 12 slate is going to be a monster. But if these 2 teams can develop the right habits in the non-conference season, that bodes well. The men's side especially, they've got nowhere to go but up, right? Everybody's expecting them to be last. The way they're playing, I think that translates into the Big 12, maybe not to that same level, right? These are some phenomenal teams, but I think you win some games that maybe you're not expected to, and maybe finish, 10th in the league, 9th in the league. I think if Utah could honestly finish 8th in the league, that's a massive, massive win. But if you can get to anywhere from 12 to 10 or something around there, I think that's a great situation for Utah. It shows progress. It shows what Craig Smith's trying to do, and so we'll see what happens. So also yesterday was the non-football early signing day, so each of your teams, signed some new players. Men's basketball got Alvin Jackson III. He's the younger brother of Frank Jackson, who played at Duke and now Charlotte Hornets. Pretty solid guard that should do well for them. The women's basketball team, they picked up 3 players. They did get the highest ranked signee in Lynn Roberts' era in Leona. They call her L.A. Sneed. She's a 5-star from Texas, point guard, ranked the 27th best player in the country according to ESPN's Top 100. She's going to be electric, and that was a big pickup for Utah. She committed about a month or 2 ago, probably about 2 months ago now, if I remember right. But she officially signed with Utah. You then get Avery Hjelmstead, 4-star wing/guard. She's 49th in the top 100. She comes from Oklahoma, another great asset. And then you get Ella Todd from Illinois. She's another wing guard. She also played flag football in high school, so kind of a fun, physical person. But they've really improved. Lynn Roberts obviously has that program humming, and they continue to get better. And then in gymnastics, I'm not going to focus on any of the other sports because these are the main sports that I cover, at least on a more full-time basis. They get Bailey Stroud, who's a 5-star athlete. She can compete in the all-around. Just another one of those Red Rocks gymnasts that is going to be a great asset for them. They're loaded in talent, and it's just continually being built by these 5-star talents. You then get Sage Curtis, who is a local girl, Riverton, Utah. Her specialties are on vault. She comes in with a 10-0 start value. She's been really good at beam. She's won at the highest levels on vault, and so she'll be great. And then you also get Nora Christian from Washington. Her specialties are bars and floor. And so you're just once again continually adding to an already deep lineup for the Red Rocks, which they will kind of open their season with a preview in about a month from now. And then you get the season in earnest starting in January. So that should be fun. I think that's another great team to watch, and they're going to do some dynamic things. All right, so that's the point where we're going to transition to Colorado, right? So you have a game on Saturday, completely different, body clock type game, where you go from 8:00 games on most of these weeks, or at least late games, to now suddenly a 10 a.m. game. This is the big noon kickoff for Colorado. It feels like they're kind of permanently placed there at sometimes with Deion Sanders and everything. The hype in terms of kind of like the public sentiment hasn't been as big as last year in terms of just everybody talking about Deion Sanders and Shadir Sanders and Travis Hunter. But that's not to say that this isn't, still humming along at a high level with the interest and everything. This is a Colorado team that comes into the game at 7-2. Their only losses are to Nebraska and Kansas State. So 2 good teams. Kansas State probably is a better team right now than Nebraska is, but 2 solid teams that that are, doing well this season, and Colorado lost to them pretty competitive. Well, outside of Nebraska, that was an early season game. They lost 28-10, but that competitive game against Kansas State, they lost by 3. So really solid team. I think you're starting to see a team that's coming together where the transfer portal on the second season has absolutely hit. They've tried to be more physical in the trenches. The offensive line still isn't exactly where it needs to be. Shadir Sanders is still running for his life on many opportunities. But all in all, this is a team that did improve in terms of physicality, in terms of talent. There's no shortage of talent on this roster, and so it's going to be an interesting matchup in Boulder. Utah's riding a 7-game win streak against the Buffaloes, and then they're also 11-2 since joining the Pac-12. So it's been heavy-handed for Utah in this series. Utah obviously is coming into this game as the lesser opponent, being 4-5. I believe that they are a 7 or 9 point underdog in this game. So the advantage is clearly in Colorado's favor, and they're playing like that. And so this becomes a tall task for Utah, not only because of who the opponent is, and we'll get into that, but this is now coming off of a very emotional loss where you worry that BYU beats Utah twice, right? Where you come out of that game so down and so frustrated that you go into this Colorado game and you're not as sound and you're not as crisp and you're not really as motivated to be able to play as you were against that BYU team. So curious to see the mentality of this team and how they approach it. I think at practice, they were definitely down, but you got a sense that they wanted to shake that off. But that's an all week thing, right? I mean, I talked to Keanu Tanavasa on Tuesday, and he said he keeps reminding the players that this isn't November 9th anymore. This is going to be November 13th or 16th. Sorry, excuse me. That you're going to be able to play these, you're playing Colorado now. You're not playing BYU anymore. And they've got to continually remind themselves of this. Shake that loss away. It sucked, but living in the past isn't going to do anything. And that's what he's been trying to preach to the team, trying to really help them understand and get ready for this game. At the end of the day, though, this is going to be a tough test. It's not easy. And so, you do what you can to be able to get this 10 a.m. game, though. You'll know pretty early how this is going to go on main Fox. So let's look at some of the stats to consider. Offensively, this has been a really solid team. Scoring offense, they're 35th in the country. They score about 32.4 points per game. And they're all passing, right? This is all pass heavy. They're 8th in the country, averaging 320 yards per game. Rushing, they're only averaging 78.3 yards per game. They're one of dead last teams, right? They're not really focusing in on that. That doesn't mean that their running backs or their run game can't be effective. And I would assume to some extent that based on how Utah has kind of defended against the run a little bit, maybe you test that out. But I think they believe that they have enough talent on the outside that they can just throw it. And it doesn't really matter what Utah has on defense. They feel like they have the confidence to do it. So this becomes a big test for somebody like a Zemiah Vaughn, a Cameron Calhoun, Smith Snowden, any of these other guys that are in that secondary to really just go up against a heavy passing attack. This is much more similar to what Utah experienced on a week-in, week-out basis last year, where you were going up against quarterbacks that were just continually throwing at you. That hasn't been really the case this year, and so it's a bit of a mindset shift, but I think this also has the potential to play into some of Utah's strengths, depending on how they play it, right? If Utah goes into that soft zone, I think Shadir Sanders can absolutely beat you. If they continue to go man-to-man, I think that gives Utah's a much better shot. However, you do have probably arguably one of the best college football players on the other side, right, in Travis Hunter. And he's able to collect balls in ways that it's you just don't see a ton from a football player. So curious to see that dynamic. This is a team though that takes a lot of sacks. They've taken 29 sacks this year. They're taking about 3 a game on average. And so there's opportunities here for the defense to really kind of get in there and mix it up and try to create some havoc plays. And if this team is anywhere near what it was last week, that's a huge advantage to Utah. They can live in that backfield and really make Shadir Sanders' life hell. If they can get that going, I think that benefits them. You've got to get Shadir, moving. You've got to get him frustrated. But with that said, he's not as bad in those situations because he's been doing that all year long for the last few years. And so he understands pressure. He gets the ball out quickly. He's able to do what he needs to. So you have to contain. This is the game where Shadir, although he doesn't look to run a ton, he'll do it. But this isn't a game where he's gonna try to run off and do everything, but you still have to contain him, right? This is gonna be a tall challenge that way. So you got that. Third downs, they convert. They're the 53rd best team. They convert 42.5%. They're decent, nothing great, nothing bad. Fourth downs, though, they're terrible in terms of the rest of the teams in the country. They're 121st. They're only converting 40% of fourth downs. So the key here really is to get, Shadir, out of these third down situations, get them into those fourth and long situations again, because they'll probably not go for it. And if they do, you've generally got a better opportunity to kind of stop them. So really that third down becomes pivotal in this game, and that's pivotal in every game, right? So I don't want to sit here and say that it's different, but it becomes a challenge. Red zone conversion, they do okay, 52nd. This is not as good as some teams that Utah's played, but they still convert, right? 86.5% in the red zone, 65% coming as touchdowns. The other 20-ish 2% is field goals. And so there's opportunities here. Like this Colorado team has done really well, but they're not unbeatable in that regard, right? Like Utah's defense, as long as they continue to play sound football, assignment football, there's opportunities here to stop this offense, just like they have with every other team this year. So it really comes down to Utah's offense. And so looking at Colorado's defense, kind of a similar story in a lot of respects. Scoring defense, they're 51st in the country. They allow 22.6 points. Run defense, that's their worst situation, and so you're going to probably see a heavy dose of Micah Bernard. You would have to hope that it's Mike Mitchell or Dijon Stanley or somebody else. You don't have Brant Keithy anymore, so you can't really utilize him in the Wildcat or try to use him in motion. But there's other players that you can do this to, right? Like these were just the guys that Utah was going to the most. And so we'll see how Bajakian schemes this up and what he does there. Passing defense, they're 64th. So there's opportunities there. They do play more of a man-type coverage. And so there are challenges there in what Isaac is able to do. It's not against the zone, and he can just kind of pick his spots. He's going to have to win some battles in that man-on-man defense. So you got that. Total defense, they're 68th in the country. This is a massive improvement, though. I mean, last year they were 130th in the country, so almost dead last. They just were not a good defense. And you had an offense that could put up points, just a defense that couldn't hold anybody. Deion Sanders has done a great job of being able to, fix that. Yeah, they went into the transfer portal and almost turned over their entire unit, brought in a bunch of guys with experience, in all facets of the game. Linebackers, they've done really well. Defensive line, they've done really well, and it's been much improved. So 68th may not seem all that much compared to some of the defenses that Utah's have played, especially BYU last week. But this is still a defense that is much better than what you saw a year ago. Third down defense, they allow they're the 51st best team in the country at this. They allow teams to convert at 36.4%. Fourth down defense, 85th. They allow 58.3. So there's opportunities here for third and fourth down if they're in the right situation. But on the same vein, red zone conversion. They've done really well on defense. They're 11th. They've only allowed 70.6% of all tries score, and 53% of those have been touchdowns. So this is a Utah team that fits right around that number of being able to get in the red zone and get there. So who wins that battle, right? Is it the defense, or is this going to be Utah that's can manufacture some offense and get some scores in the red zone? That's going to be an interesting battle. Partly, a lot of that is because of Travis Hunter, right? I mean, he's one player, and you can say you can avoid him, but he's got ability to be able to just flip the defense and and really make it so that it works. Now, it's obviously not just him. He's 1/11th of the team, but he is a big asset where you've got to be on your game to be able to go up against him, because if there's a ball anywhere near him, he's likely going to pick it off or at least make a play on it. So tough challenge. That'll be something that I think Utah is going to do a ton to try to get that run game developing more, just so that you can not have those opportunities where you put it into his hands. And so we'll see what that game plan is. Looking at Colorado, a lot of these names. Shadir Sanders is the guy that everybody's focusing in on, at least in terms of quarterback play, right? Obviously, Deion's son, he's thrown for 2,800 yards, almost 2,900 yards this year, 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, completing it at a 73% completion rate. That's great numbers. I mean, he's doing a phenomenal job on offense, and there's reasons why he's going to be near the top of that board on the first round of the NFL draft. He leads the team in PFF at a 90.3 grade on offense. There's things about him that you can work with, right? Like, he holds onto the ball too long. He's always under duress, especially if you can put him under pressure. But you have to be assignment sound with him, because he will pick you apart. And Utah didn't have to play him last year because he was injured or they were holding him out. But this is going to be a challenge that they have to go against. They've gone against, I don't want to say they've gone against tougher, but you've gone against guys that have been in a similar spot, when Caleb Williams or Michael Penix Jr., and Utah's been able to do it. So it's just staying assignment sound. It's not letting him beat you, or at least not letting him beat you with big gashes, right? Trying to let everything kind of fall in the middle a little bit, and kind of behind the sticks, or in front of the sticks, try to get things that way. You also have Travis Hunter, as I've mentioned, two-sport athlete, or two-way athlete, not two-sport athlete. He could be a two. Have you seen him play basketball? He's actually pretty good. On offense, he's caught for 856 yards, 9 touchdowns. He's averaging about 12.5 yards per catch. He's the second highest producer on offense in terms of his grade. He's been really solid there. And then on defense, his stats aren't going to necessarily jump off the page, but that's because he's not being targeted. There's 21 tackles, 1 TFL, 7 pass breakups, 1 forced fumble, 2 interceptions. The reality is he influences this defense a ton, where you have to look away from him, you have to account for him, or you're in trouble. And so there's opportunities there, but I would say probably not throw in his direction, and you'll probably be in a much better spot. But there's other guys. They have other receivers as well that have been pretty solid. You have LaJohntay Wester, Will Shepard, and Jimmy Horn. These guys have all done a great job. LaJohntay Wester has 583 yards and 8 touchdowns. He's been kind of their second leading. Well, he has been their second leading guy. He's been a great asset for them. But Will Shepard has really come on. He's deadly in the end zone. He's been able to find a lot of success there. So on the defensive side, they've got 2 great edge rushers in Arden Walker and BJ Green II. And 2 of their highest graded defenders. They're going to put a lot of pressure on that line. They're going to do what they can to be able to really speed up Isaac and try to make sure that he gets into situations that he doesn't feel comfortable. So this will be a tough test. I don't know that Utah wins this. I don't know that that's a surprise to anybody. But I think Utah has to play kind of on the same level as they did last week. They have to be able to get offense going. That's not a question. But I think you have to be able to develop Isaac Wilson and move him along in a way that allows him to feel comfortable, right? Utah can't just fully focus in on the run game. Mekhi Bernard will do a lot of the work, and there's opportunities with this Colorado defense where that can work. But you've got to be able to mix it up a little bit. You've got to be able to find ways to be able to make him feel comfortable and make him a part of the offense so that they can move the ball. If not, this is going to be another one of those terrible nights where the defense does its job, you hope that they do its job, and Utah just can't manufacture offense. So we'll see what happens. I don't know if there's really any story or a key to the game outside of something like that. But take it for what it's worth. Enjoy the team. Enjoy what's going on, even though it has been a rough season. These guys deserve your support, at least from what they say, right? Like, they feel it. They want to be supported, and whenever you're there and supporting them, it makes them, buy in a little bit more. These are guys that are putting in all their time and effort. Obviously, some of them are trying to get to the league. They're trying to do what they can. But at the same time, this is a team that is really, they're a solid team. They just haven't been able to figure it out on the offensive side of the ball and really put it together. So there's opportunities, but this will be a tough challenge. It doesn't get any easier because then you have Iowa State and then you have UCF and other road games. So we're coming down to the end of it. It's not been an easy season for anybody, but hopefully things kind of improve for Utah in that regard, that we start to see a little bit more offense. Maybe Isaac gets a little bit more comfort knowing that he is the only one. Not that he didn't think that he was the guy, but, that he can make the right moves and that it fits well and that Utah can kind of improve. So we'll call that a day, and we'll come back again on Monday and see how this went. So I appreciate you guys all for listening. It means a lot to me to know that the support's here and that you're interested in it. I do this for you. This isn't for me, honestly. In a lot of ways, not doing a podcast is easier. So, but I want to be able to give you guys the information that's not just in the written articles. I want to make sure that you're getting everything, and then I'm updating you on Utah football stuff that means something to you guys. So I appreciate you, and we will catch you again next week as we recap this game. Have a good one.